Today we're talking about graphics and media. In this particular lecture, we'll talk about different types of media formats, for example, JPEG, GIF, PNG, and so on. And so that's the main objective. Now we see that when you talk about graphics and images, you find these everywhere. And what has happened is that these have grown in importance over time. And since the time when we've started using the World Wide Web, you find these images all on different kinds of websites. And now in social media, you have memes, and you find people sharing images on Facebook and on Twitter, and Instagram is famous for photos and images. So it's something that you see all the time, and people have come to expect very high quality images, and sometimes interspersed with texts, and in good resolution images that you can see that look really well, irrespective of whether you're seeing it on your phones, on tablets, or bigger desktops. So graphics, when you talk about them, they're like pretty much everywhere now. So looking back a little in the history, so in the 80s, there was this term which was very famous, which was called desktop publishing. And PageMaker was a well-known software then, and a lot of designers got really excited and started making a lot of good images and graphics using the Aldus PageMaker. And then there were the other software that came after that. And now, of course, you have the Adobe Creative Suite, and then you have other free software like GIMP and other formats like SVG, WebGL, and so on. So today, no one really talks about desktop publishing anymore, but it was one of the earlier terms used for graphics and manipulating graphics. So to look at the big picture, there are a few things that come when we think of computer graphics. There's the type, there's the color, and there's various kinds of media formats, and there's the composition. So here there is this book which is called the Web Style Guide. Now it's a free book. It's sold as well, but you can go online and to this website called webstyleguide.com, and there you can find a lot of details about each of these, what type means, what color means, each of these different formats. So it's a great book when you're doing web design, or when you're trying to learn about these different formats. So in this particular lecture today, we'll look at a short introduction, but the book gives you a much more detailed treatment of these topics. So one of the terms used is a type. So when you talk about fonts, there are these two primary categories called the serif font and the sans serif font. So serif is mostly having this that kind of a foot at the lower half of the font, and sans serif is when you don't have that. So for instance, if you use F, so then you'd have this F if in a serif font, it would extend below as well, like G would extend below, and P, a lot of things would extend below. And whereas in sans serif, you have that you have things which are coming on top. So right now with this, we are looking at sans serif over here. So there are traditional fonts which are which were used largely for book publishing, and there were modern redesigns and some fonts which are just for the computer. So even when we talk about file types, there are types known as TrueType, which was an early iteration of fonts where you could get exactly the same kind of font and reproduce it exactly in different formats. So that was known as TrueType, and that was how certain fonts came to be. Then there is other types called the OpenType, PostScript, and now there is a font called the Web-Oriented Font Files, or WOFF, WOFF. So what these fonts do is that they will download the font file on your computer as well when you're displaying your web page. And that's really important, because then your font can display exactly as you intend it to be. But traditionally, whenever you choose certain fonts when you're building a website, let's say, then there's no guarantee that that same font would display exactly as it is on the end user's computer, because that person may or may not have the font installed. So if you want to be doubly sure, you could also create image files of using certain fonts, and then those image files can then easily download on the end user's computer. So that's one way of doing it. Or you can use this web-oriented font files as well, which get downloaded. So there are these various fonts: Garamond, has been quite well known. Times New Roman and Arial are the most common fonts for quite a long while, and these have been largely used. But now a lot of people use these other fonts. Courier is largely used to show computer code. Whenever you want to show the computer programming and code, then a lot of people use the Courier font. And there are, of course, hundreds of other font types. And then if we go to Google Input Tool, you'll find that you can type the fonts in various different languages, and you can have things in Devanagari. This is the font in Hindi, or you can have it in Russian or Chinese or Thai or Arabic. All of these different characters are different font types which you can display. So, for instance, let's try to look at a font type here. Let's say yeah. So if I come here and if we go to Google Input Tools, so here you'll find that okay. So once you have this Google Input Tools, you can choose many different languages. And let's say we choose a language called Nepali, and then if we type any word, if we say hi, how are you, it will sort of try to translate it in that language. If we choose a font, let's say Hawaiian, then here there's not much difference here, but let's say let's look at some others. This is Chinese, simplified Chinese. Okay, so here you can get these. You can choose all these different characters in these different languages. So of course you must know the language. So when you know the language, then you know exactly what you're typing. But you can. The good part is that you can type it in the English, the keyboard that we have, the QWERTY keyboard in English, and then that will translate that to all these different languages which are there. So it is. What this means is that we have. We are able to support pretty much all the languages in the world using this format called UTF-8, and this is a character encoding for different characters, and which can accommodate pretty much all the languages of the world. So when that is selected, then you can. If you are building a web page, then UTF-8 is specified on the top part of the web page. If you are using Windows and you have a notepad file, then if you type using all these special characters that we just saw, then you need to save it as UTF-8 so that those characters are not lost. So these are some of the other types, and then there are image formats called BMP or bitmap, and then you have GIF, which is the graphics interchange format, and you have JPEG, which is the Joint Photographic Experts Group, PNG, Portable Networks Graphics, and TIFF, which is best for archival. Now, GIF is the most widely supported graphics format on the web, and you can a lot of for diagrammatic images, which are when you draw like pencil art and all that sort of diagrams, then GIFs work best with basically things where you do not have a lot of color variations, and that's when GIF is really good. But where you have color variation, then JPEG is a good choice. Now, what JPEG does is that JPEG is an excellent format because it allows you to store your file in different quality components. So for instance, if you store it at the 100% quality, then your file size is really large. But then if you reduce the quality to say 95 or 90, then your file size drastically reduces. Like sometimes it can be like about 30 or 40% reduction, or even 50% in file size reduction, just by decreasing the quality by 5 or 10%. So what this does is that even with that 80 or 90% quality of JPEG, it looks pretty good, and the file size then becomes really small. But if you were to select TIFF, for instance, then TIFF can have really huge file sizes, and that is good for archival, but not really great for displaying in web pages. So what some people do is that if they want to have the very high quality display as well, then they would have the TIFF, a link to the TIFF, but then they would have smaller thumbnails, and those thumbnails are either in JPEG or PNG. Okay, so if you have to choose a good choice, then you can go with either JPEG or PNG most of the times for your photos or images to display on the web. So this is one example where you see these different image types. The first one is a GIF, and you see the PNG and JPEG. This particular picture that I'm showing you is not of a very good quality, so you can't really make out the difference all that much. But the idea is that in a GIF image, the picture quality would be quite poor. And this is so the file size here is around 400 kilobytes. PNG, the quality is excellent and the compression is lossless, but the file size is about double of that. And then JPEG, here you see that the JPEG image is there, and the quality has been reduced a little bit. Rather than having a quality of 10, it has been reduced to 8, and the quality and the file size here is like really good. So JPEG can really reduce your file sizes and still achieve a pretty good quality, whereas in other formats you have to have a very large file size to achieve the same quality. So this is one example of PNG versus JPEG. So here it says sometimes PNG is superior for illustration, screenshots, anything with text, webcomics, graphs, and logos. But if you say like only JPEG, then so JPEG, as you see, is not really good for anything where there is like clear text like this. So here in cases like this, you can use PNG, and you can also use GIF, which is also great when you do not have lots of different colors, color variations. So if you have a photo like this, then use JPEG. But if you have an image like this where you just have like 1 or 2 colors, or even like 8 colors or 16 colors or 32 colors, like a fixed set of colors, not like here when you have hundreds of color variations. So in this case, use either a PNG or a GIF. And then there are these two kinds of representing colors. In a screen image, colors are represented in terms of pixels, and you say that certain number of pixels by certain number of pixels in a square inch. And here you have, so when you have, let's say even in a 72 pixel by 72 pixels, here it will make up more than 5,000 pixels per square inch. So the larger the number of pixels you have in a square inch, the better your resolution is, the higher your resolution, and the image is clearer. So here you have a combination of red, green, and blue, the RGB format, and this format then makes up for your. This is the format where you can have you can adjust these components, more of red or more of green or more of blue, and you can get different colors. And this is a representation for the screen. But for the same image, when you think in terms of printed image, then these are represented mostly in terms of DPI or dots per inch. So when you're buying a printer, that's something that is shown as well, so as to what is the quality that of print quality that the printer can support. And here, if you notice that the ink that you put in a printer would typically be these 4 colors, which would be the cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K is for the black. And you replace all of these different inks. So that's a way of representing this as a printed image. And then you also have the different ways of representing colors. You can represent these colors by the names of colors, like for instance red. So the common colors like red, green, blue, yellow, and so on. These are listed by name, and when you're building a web page, you can specify them directly by name, or you can represent them by a color model. So by RGB, you can specify them in terms of 128, 40, 123, and so on. Or you can have it as a format called like the RGBA, which is the same as RGB, the components of the amount of red, green, and blue. But you also have a transparency represented over here, which is an alpha channel, and which can go from 0 to maximum value of 1, and so to move from transparent to opaque. So 0 is fully transparent and 1 is fully opaque. And you can also represent this in terms of cyan, yellow, magenta, and black as well. So there are these different types of colors, complementary colors, split complementary, that having these different colors, so on. So what I want to show you is a website called Peloton, peloton.com, Peletton. And when you go to this site, it will it's a great website to design the color scheme for your pages, for your web pages. So you can go here and for instance choose like what kind of colors you want. Let's say you choose any one color. It's a monochromatic or one color scheme. So then you can choose these different colors, and then it will show you the scheme over here, and you will also get the hexadecimal code for these colors. So these are this is how this red, green, and blue are represented in terms of hexadecimal colors. So here where you have 7B, 85, and AD, these represent RGB, G, and B in hexal digits. Hexal digits are digits between 0 and 15. So where 0 to 9 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you have the alphabets as A, B, C, D, E, F. So these numbers from anywhere from 0 to 9 and A to F are then used to represent different colors. And you can, basically in simpler words, all it really means is that when you go to any web page and you want a particular color scheme, you need to specify this 6-digit code. And the way to get this code is basically to go to a site like this, and then you can just take the mouse over it, and then you can see what exactly that code is. And so you can go and select all these different colors. If you want to add a complementary color, then you can have a button here. It will add another complementary color for whatever color you're using. Complementary colors are typically colors on the opposite side of the wheel. And or you can choose, here it says 3 colors scheme. So here you have 3 different colors represented over here. Or you can have like a 4 color, and so on. Okay, so you can play around with this site. It's a really nice site, and it will give you the RGB values of the color codes that you can then use in your web pages. So so let's say that you have this value called 76276C, right? So basically, when you go to your page, when you say font color red, so here you could just specify this as hex, and then let's say CCC, CCAA00, whatever the color code is. And there you can get the exact color that you want to specify. And then let's talk about other media like video files. So here you have QuickTime, which is and that is saved as a .qt format, and that's mostly an Apple format. And then there is the FLV or the Flash format. Now this is being retired. So Adobe announced in 2017 that they would be retiring it by 2020. So it's not really a good idea to use this format anymore. And then you have other files like MOV, MP4, and MP3, MP4, etc. So these are very well known now. And MOV or MP4 are used more for videos, and MP3s for audio files. And this is a very nice compression rate. So here you can get very high quality audio files when they're saved in the MP3 format. So basically, to summarize, some of the key points of what we talked about is that digital images have different formats that preserve different levels of data, and usually websites offer a thumbnail, a GIF or a PNG, and an original file. So this part we can see it when we go to, let's say, a site like Flickr. So this is flickr.com, and let's say we go and search for Boston, and we'll get lots of images over here. And when we want to go and look for any particular image, and maybe if you want to download the image, it will give you an option of view different file sizes. So you see the same image in terms of large formats as well as smaller sizes. So typically that is what lots of good websites will offer, that they'll have a smaller size image which can load quicker, and then you can provide the user to download larger size images. Let's say if you are providing high quality photos, or if you want to share your paintings or the other kinds of your artwork, then you could do that, for instance, or even photos from your trips or your family. And color models in the computer are expressed as real-world terms such as red, or by a color model red, green, blue, or red, green, blue, alpha. or also in terms of hue, saturation, and brightness. So this is mostly used by photographers, where you can change the hue, you get different shades of the color. Saturation is again, whether more saturated means the colors are really bright. They look like a deeper orange or a deeper red or a deeper green. But if they're less saturated, they go more towards grayscale or black and white. And then you can increase their brightness and contrast as well. And here you have the CMYK format, which is cyan, yellow, magenta, and image. And websites support images in the image tag, and now you can in the new HTML5 format, you have newer tags like video, canvas, and so on. So instead of Flash, which is used earlier, now you should use the native video format in your HTML. So to know more about the new elements in HTML5, you can look at the W3 School tutorial on HTML. So that's what we did. We talked about graphics and media. I also encourage you to try and play around more with these. So what you could do is, let's say if you're using Mac and if you have the Adobe Suite, then you could use a software like Photoshop, or you can use Adobe Photoshop is there, or Fireworks. So these are great for creating your own graphics, and there are tutorials on these on YouTube. But a really nice tool that you can download is called GIMP. And this is a GNU image manipulation program. The good part about GIMP is that it's a free and open source tool. So it pretty much has that kind of capability which Adobe Fireworks provides, or maybe Photoshop to some extent. And so it's a very powerful program, and it's free. And there's a lot of documentation tutorials for these as well. So when you're building your website, then I really encourage you to use GIMP and download and play around with that. Or if you have access to Photoshop, then you can use that, or any other tools as well. There are lots of tools for creating your graphics and manipulating images now. So that's all I wanted to cover for this particular lecture on graphics and media. Thank you.